Hello and welcome back to our live readings for Circle for Hekate by Sorita. This is our second live reading for Chapter 2, Many Named Mother of the Gods. If you would like to hear the introduction and first chapter, then feel free to check out the other reading on my channel. If you would like to follow along, you can follow along in this video using the screen share I have here, or you can grab your own copy of the PDF by joining the Sanctuary of the Crossroads, or you may already be in it, and find the link to the PDF for your own device. Alright, let's get started. Hail, many-named Mother of the Gods, whose children are fair. Hail, mighty Hekate of the Threshold. Hekate is a goddess of many names. This is emphasized in both the PGM and Proclus's Hymn to Hekate and Janus, where she is referred to as many-named. Nonus similarly alludes to Hekate as being a goddess of many names in his 5th century CE Dionysica. If thou art Hekate of many names, if in the night thou dost shake thy mystic torch in brand-carrying hand, come night wanderer. The understanding different groups of people hold of a deity often change over time. These changes are frequently natural adaptations to an ever-evolving culture or variations reflecting a changing landscape due to industrialization or migration. Religious and ritual practices evolve with what is available. For example, as different foods and plants become available, the aesthetics and ingredients of offerings will change, albeit in a way which preserves something of the original. Similarly, the names and epithets given to a deity will change with successive generations of people encountering their worship. The Greeks and Romans traveled within a vast geographical region, conquering, trading, and spreading their religious practices and beliefs. They were fond of equating the deities they encountered in different parts of their respective empires to gods in their own pantheon. Sometimes their own deity would, with time, also take on some of the qualities of the local deity, as the conflation between the two deities become complete. Occasionally, a particular cult became more prevalent and absorbed other smaller local cults into itself. Names and epithets associated with a deity therefore provide us not only with information on how to invoke or praise a deity, but also with information about their history. Epithets are windows back in time to how people in different places and times understood a deity, whilst simultaneously telling us about the history of deities whose cults influence that of the god we are examining. The name Hekate, or Hekate. The origin and meaning of the name Hekate remain obscured by history. There are, however, several plausible explanations. Hekate may have the same root as Hekatos, which is the masculine version of the name and means worker from afar. Hekatos was a prevalent cult title of Apollo. This title denotes Apollo's skilled use of his bow and arrows, and there is no reason why Hekate as the female version of the name should not be taken as having the same meaning. Artemis was famous for her skills as a huntress, using her bow and arrows, which she used to hunt but also to punish wrongdoers by sending disease. Apollo used his bow to protect and also initially to revenge wrongdoers. Both Artemis and Apollo were considered deities associated with archery. Hekate is on occasion shown with a bow and arrows, but such depictions are rare, and no explanation is offered in surviving myths. If this is the meaning of the name, it would further strengthen the existing association between Hekate and Apollo. It would also support the notion that the goddesses Hekate and Artemis, who are frequently conflated, may have originally been the same goddess, or at the very least had common origins. Alternatively, Hekate may be a foreign name with an unknown meaning, but with a likely connection to the region of Caria in Anatolia, where names with the same root were commonly used as a first name. However, this is a chicken and egg argument. It seems more likely that children may have been named after Hekate/Hekatos, both of whom were popular deities in this region. The name Hekate might then still be foreign to the region. It is possible that a local deity with an existing cult was conflated with the incoming cult of Hekate, and that the incoming cult incorporated local ideas and practices at the time. Another theory is that the name Hekate may have been derived from the Greek word ekato, meaning 100. Hekate, with a C, is the Roman Latin transliteration of Hekate. Using Hekate rather than Hekate, with a C, is a personal preference. Both transliterations are correct and could be used interchangeably. Divine mergers. Any attempt to try and understand Hekate by putting her into a tidy box and marking it with her name will only lead to complications and a lot of needless headaches. In her role as goddess of the threshold and of gateways, Hekate uniquely interacted with a multitude of other deities, as she was often worshipped at city gates and at entranceways to the temples of other gods. Gateway and entranceway shrines may have been smaller, however, they would have been a constant reminder of the presence of the deity to all who entered and left. They were not insignificant. As previously noted, both the Greeks and Romans had a penchant for renaming the local deities they encountered after their own deities, usually based on shared qualities they perceived. Unfortunately, this means that sometimes the local names were lost and replaced with the Greek or Roman name. Again, this makes it difficult to provide a clearly labelled box into which to put Hekate, or indeed any of the deities encountered by these nations. The religious plurality and polyonymy of antiquity do not care much for the fixed labels we are so very fond of in the 21st century CE. The understanding we have today of Hekate was strongly influenced by the different deities she was equated to, conflated with, and otherwise merged with over many hundreds of years. For this reason, it is important to be aware of at least some of the goddesses who may have influenced Hekate, because by doing so, we can enrich our own understanding and connection to her today. Cybele, the mother of the gods. Hekate was intimately linked to the cult of the Phrygian Cybele, especially in Anatolia. She was equated to the Phrygian mother, and shown as being her attendant. The title Mother of the Gods is occasionally given to Hekate, emphasizing this connection. In religious art, Cybele was shown as being accompanied by Hekate and the god Hermes. In these depictions, Cybele is usually shown as being large, with Hekate and Hermes being smaller and standing either side of her. Alternatively, Hekate and Hermes are seen as leading and following Cybele, who is shown riding on her chariot or seated on a lion. A stucco now in the Cairo Museum collection, which is believed to have been found in Smyrna, Anatolia, shows Cybele seated with lions in the central position, flanked by Hekate and Hermes. It was mounted on a podium with depictions of the 12 gods. Hekate and Cybele share a strong association with bulls. Hekate was frequently described as being bull-headed and sometimes bull-faced. The Great Mother Goddess's cult stronghold in southern Anatolia abounded with bull symbolism, to the extent that some writers refer to the people of southern Anatolia as the people of the bull. Here, figurines showing an enthroned, voluptuous woman flanked by lions were found, which strongly resemble that of later depictions of Cybele. Southern Anatolia is believed to have been occupied from at least 8000 BCE, suggesting that the Phrygian mother's cult may have existed in the region for many thousands of years. An enthroned statue of Cybele in the Archaeological Museum of Corinth shows a triple Hekate depicted on the right-hand side of the throne. On the left is depicted branches of pine with pan flutes, both symbols of the god Pan. Artemis. Artemis Hekate watch over the childbed of women. Hekate and Artemis are frequently conflated from the 5th century BCE onwards. Sometimes they were merged as Artemis Hekate, and at other times they were simply thought to be the same goddess. They both also maintain their independence as individual goddesses, being cousins in Hesiod's Theogony, and portrayed as taking different parts next to each other in selected myths. When Hecate gains an association with the moon in later literature, she is paired with Apollo, the brother of Artemis, who then becomes equated to the sun. In doing so, Hecate and Apollo replace Selene, moon, and Helios, sun, as the deities of the moon and the sun. Artemis and Hecate share several important cult titles in common, including Sorita, Enodia, Elethia, Persia, Tauropolos, Kore, Parthenos, Phosphorus, and Phoebe. They were celebrated as Artemis Hecate at Munichia, a full moon festival on the 16th of Munchion at Piraeus. Small cakes called amphifontes, meaning shining on both sides, were offered to the goddess here. The same cakes decorated with small torches formed part of Crossroads offerings, which may have also been dedicated to Hecate. They additionally share numerous symbols in common, including bees, dogs, hunting bows, torches, serpents, the polos, modius, and trees. Based on available evidence, it is possible to speculate that they are aspects of the same earlier goddess who survived from the Greek Dark Ages into the Hellenic period, or that Hecate may have been an aspect of Artemis which gained popularity in its own right. Similarly, they may have been closely connected with an earlier cult, likely that of the Phrygian Great Mother. It might also be pure coincidence, and the various associations could be explained by similarities they held in common with subsequent syncretizing. Bendis. We find the undoubtedly Thracian goddess Bendis with many points of likeness to Hecate. The epithet Dilonchos, twofold, that belonged to the former is explained by Hesychius as describing the goddess who, like Hecate, had power in more than one sphere of nature, and the torch seems to have been the special symbol of both. The Thracian Bendis shares symbols such as spears, horses, and crossroads in common with Hecate. Both were also considered to be benevolent mother goddesses. Like Hecate, Bendis was equated with or merged with Artemis, and was sometimes called the Thracian Artemis. Bendis was a lunar goddess and the mother of the god Sabazius, who is likened to Dionysos. She was depicted with two spears, and Hecate also bears a spear, the best known example being from the 5th century BCE play by Sophocles, the Woodcutters. The spear of Hecate of the Crossroads, which she bears as she travels Olympus, and dwells in the triple ways of the Holy Land. By the 5th century BCE, when Bendis' worship spread to Athens, Hecate's cult was gaining in popularity in the city. If Thrace was Hecate's homeland, the Indo-European and Middle Eastern influences associated with Hecate might be explained by the influence of Bendis on the torchbearers' cult. Michev asserts that Hecate fits into the Thracian idea of a mother goddess, writing that the depiction and the idea of the Thracian mother goddess as Hecate, in essence as the one who gives birth to the divine son, shouldn't seem strange to us, because of the images found in the territory of Bulgaria of Hecate, with a little child in her hands, again accompanied by her sacred dog wolves, which are a second naming of the divine son in his winter hypostasis at the time of his birth. Other authors have also made this connection between the Thracian mother goddess and Hecate. Janoshova writes that, under the Oriental influence, Bendis was often also identified with deities of the night, Kotito, Cybele, and Hecate. These deities were often associated with the life cycle and fertility of women, and were famous for orgiastic night dances and celebrations. These goddesses are also known for their connection to dark magic and the underworld. Dogs were sacrificed to Bendis, an uncommon practice which was also associated with both Hecate and Enodia. All three of these goddesses were equated and thought to be the same by ancient writers. Bendis has also been equated to Hecate at Neapolis, and the Parthenos of the city there. Also see the wandering goddess Neapolis. Bonadea. Others again hold the view that she is Hecate of the netherworld. Hecate was equated to the Roman virgin goddess Bonadea, the good goddess. Hekate and Bonadea are both associated with snakes, knowledge of pharmakeia, and healing, and both are named explicitly as virgin goddesses. The genuine identity of Bonadea was considered an initiatory secret, and the knowledge of her true name was closely guarded. Bonadea was linked to the worship of Hekate, Demeter, Ceres, as well as to Medea and many other goddesses. Based on the available evidence, it is conceivable that Hekate was somehow associated with this Roman cult. Brimo, the maiden daughter of Perseus, Brimo Triformos. Brimo was a name given to a Thessalian goddess of the underworld. Her name was invoked and used in conjunction with that of Hekate from the 5th century BCE, and was also given as an epithet to Persephone, Demeter, and Cybele. Brimo can be translated as terrifying. In the Orphic gold tablets, Brimo is used as a name for a goddess forming a trio with Demeter and Persephone, and is most likely a reference to Hekate, who usually completes the Eleusinian trio. If this is so, then it opens up interesting avenues for speculation about Hecate's role at Eleusis. We are told that Brimo gives birth to Brimos at the climax of the ceremonies of Eleusis, which is most often interpreted by contemporary scholars as Persephone giving birth to Iacchos, her son and the primary male torchbearer of Eleusis. If the Brimo of Eleusis is Hekate, then this echoes the role of Bendis, giving birth to Sabazius in the Thracian legends. Both Sabazius and Iacchos are equated to Dionysos. In the mysteries of Samothrace, Sabazius was worshipped alongside Hekate Brimo, providing additional strength to the argument that Hekate, not Persephone, was the Brimo of Eleusis. The PGM equates Hekate to Brimo, and it is a title used for Hekate on Diphyxions. The ceremonial triangle, which forms part of a curious set of magical tools found at Pergamon, depicting Hekate at the 3 corners, names her as Brimo. The name is also used in the context of katabasis, a function associated with Hekate as well as with Orpheus. The mysteries of Eleusis were, according to some ancient writers, established by Orpheus, the Thracian mystic. Medea, in addition to invoking Hekate, also invokes the goddess as Brimo in the Argonautica. Despoina. Despoina, lady, was an Arcadian goddess associated with fertility and sometimes said to be the daughter of Demeter with Poseidon. She was linked to the Eleusinian mysteries, and her real name, according to some records, could not be revealed to non-initiates. Nevertheless, Aeschylus specifically calls her Despoina Hekate. Despoina is also given doorway and gateway attributes usually reserved for Hekate. Despoina was additionally used as a title for Hekate at Didyma, where Hekate was venerated at the gates of the Temple of Apollo, as well as in Colophon, another city in Ionia. Demeter and Persephone. Demeter, Persephone, and Hekate form a formidable trio of goddesses synonymous with the mystery cults of Greece, especially at Eleusis. The 3 goddesses each maintains their own separate identities, were also conflated with one another. Hekate is equated with Persephone and also with Demeter. It is possible that some of the conflations were due to misunderstandings due to the goddesses' close relationship at major cult centers such as Eleusis, Selinute, and Samothrace, and frequent depictions of them together. Tempting as it is to speculate that Hecate's triplicity is somehow linked to the connection between Demeter, Persephone, and Hekate, there is no evidence to support this. If there were a connection, freeformed images of Hekate would be expected to somehow reflect this connection, which they don't. Historical triple images of Hekate always shows 3 similar, often identical women, even when they are holding different objects. All 3 are depicted with torches, and although Hekate is more often shown with 2 torches, this is not exclusively so. All three are also associated with the poppy, the modius, grain measure, and grain. Persephone and Hecate are both shown with the pomegranates. They are both named as daughters of Demeter and Zeus, and until Persephone's abduction, they are both described as virgin goddesses. Also see the wandering goddess Hecate at Eleusis. Diana. In Nemi, Diana / Artemis was venerated as a goddess of the Crossroads, as a triple goddess, Trivia, and as such had several functions. She was a nature deity, but also of the moon and the darker sides of nature. And she was also venerated as a protector of women and childbirth. Diana's cults became one of the most loved and widespread cults of the Roman Empire. Hecate and Artemis are both persistently equated with Diana, just as they are with one another. In Aricia, Diana shared the title of Trivia with Hecate, giving her a threefold nature. Horace named her as Diva Triformis, and Catullus named her as Diana Trivia. The triple form of Diana was not confined to Nemi. A fresco in the house of Livia on the Palatine Hill shows a sanctuary with a monument believed to be a bathylic, a meteoric stone, shaped like the omphalos at Delphi. The depiction is accompanied by the heads of a boar, goat, and stag, which indicate that this is a sanctuary of Diana Hecate. A depiction on the wall behind the stone depicts 3 small female figures, believed to be Diana Hecate, holding torches surrounded by large trees. Diana's most famous cult center was on the shores of Lake Nemi, Aricia, about 40 kilometers from Rome. At this volcanic lake, which Virgil named Speculum Dianae, which means the mirror of Diana, the goddess was worshipped continuously for at least 1,000 years. The legendary Rex Nemorensis, king of the woods, served the goddess here as both priest and guardian of the temple. The Nemoralia, the famous festival of Diana, which started at Lake Nemi, lasted for 3 days during the mid-August period, 13th to 15th. The poet Ausonius remarks in his Idyll that the Ides of August is dedicated to Hecate of Latonia, Leto. Sextiles Hecate Latonia Vinicat Ides. These dates are also associated with Hecate at her temple in Legina Caria. At the feast of Nemoralia, lights were floated out onto the lake by devotees. This widespread festival was adopted by the later Roman Catholics and became the feast of the Assumption of the Virgin Mary. Some contemporary worshippers honor Hecate on the 13th or the 16th of August as a likely continuation of this feast. Evidence for Diana's association with Artemis suggests that it started before the Roman era, as the Etruscans were already in part Hellenized before they settled in Italy. If this is the case, it accounts for the varied depictions of Diana, showing her like the huntress depictions of Artemis, as well as in the form of the Ephesian Artemis and the Lady of the Wild Animals, Potnia Phaeron. The Etruscans are best known as being associated with the Tuscany region of Italy, but new evidence, including DNA, suggests that they had their origins in Anatolia. If this is so, then some of the religious views held by the Etruscans may have travelled directly from Anatolia and other regions such as Thrace to Italy long before the Greek and Roman influence. Etruscan society had social views related to the role of women, which were significantly different from that of the Romans and Greeks. This frequently led the latter to believe that the Etruscans were outrageously promiscuous. Women were given much higher social status in Etruscan society. For example, mothers, rather than just fathers, were named on the graves. Diana and Hecate both continue to be associated with the practice of magic and witchcraft. Diana is, for example, the goddess of the Aradia, or the Gospel of the Witches by Charles G. Leland, a text which had a monumental but sometimes overlooked influence on the development of initiatory Wicca and subsequent goddess and pagan traditions of the 20th century. The first part of The Charge of the Goddess, which is one of the key texts of Gardnerian Wicca is taken nearly verbatim from this 1899 text. When I shall have departed from this world, whenever ye have need of anything, once in a month, and when the moon is full, ye shall assemble in some desert place, or in a forest all together join, to adore the potent spirit of your queen, my mother great Diana. She who fain would learn all sorcery, yet has not won its deepest secrets, them my mother will teach her. In truth, all things as yet unknown, and ye shall all be freed from slavery, and so ye shall be free in everything. And as the sign that ye are truly free, ye shall be naked in your rights, both men and women also. This shall last until the last of your oppressors shall be dead. Leland's works is part of a long history of Diana being associated with the survival of paganism and magic in Italy. Here are a few examples. 1576, Bartolo Spina wrote of witches gathering at night to worship Diana in his work. 1647, Peter Papernus wrote De Noche Maga Beneventana and the Effectibus Magicis of Diana. 1749, Girolamo Tatarotti published a book called Del Congresso Notturno delle Lami, which declared that the identity of the Dianic cult with modern witchcraft is demonstrated and proven. Diana's worship spread throughout the Roman Empire. In Britain, for example, there is evidence of Diana's worship during the Roman era, including inscriptions and engraved gemstones dating to between the 2nd and 4th century CE in the south of England and Welsh borders. Diana found a foothold in Britain, and centuries after the Roman Empire ceased to exist, stories of Diana were still being told and passed down successive generations. Diana became the goddess of witches and the fairy queen, and was linked to the practice of magic, superstition, and the occult. But where there are stories of Diana, there are whispers of Hekate, and like Diana, Hekate appears as the fairy queen in Scottish folklore. In Scottish lore, Hekate was often equated with the fairy queen of the Unseelie Court, Nicknevin, who dwelt in the mountain Ben Nevis. The continuous association of Diana with witchcraft, together with the conflation of Diana with Hekate, most likely contributed to some of the associations Hekate has with witchcraft today. Enodia expressed Hecate's connection with roads, specifically places where 3 roads meet. Enodia is the name of an ancient goddess associated with the underworld and Rhodes, who was worshipped in Thessaly alongside Zeus before the 5th century BCE. Her name translates to "in the road." Worship in Pherae may have started out of doors and predated the building of the sanctuary, which is why it is difficult to establish a foundation date for this site. However, the more than 3,500 finds linked to the sanctuary attest that it was in regular use over a long period of time. Many of the figurines deposited at the site represent animals including bulls, snakes, dogs, and horses, animals which are all also associated with Hekate. From Pherae, Enodia's name spread to other parts of the Greek world. She was worshipped in Larissa, Thessaly, Macedonia, and Athens. Although Enodia may originally have been a separate goddess, her cult became synonymous with and indistinguishable from that of Hekate. In Hippocrates' work, Hekate Enodia is named as being associated with the nocturnal attacks of ghosts and bad dreams, nightmares. Under this name, she was also frequently named as being associated with the souls of the dead and witchcraft. Dogs were sacrificed to Enodia, and it may also be through this divine fusion that dog sacrifices came to be associated with Hekate. Purificatory and scapegoat rituals frequently featured dog sacrifices, and it is important to note that these practices were performed in the names of several deities, not just that of Hekate. Some of the more sinister ideas associated with Hekate, such as ghosts, dog sacrifices, and hostile witchcraft can be found prominently in the cult of Enodia. Nevertheless, when Enodia was included as one of the Olympian 12 gods, her association with ghosts and magic was not always highlighted. In addition to being used as an epithet for Hekate, the name Enodia was also occasionally used for the goddesses Artemis and Persephone. As a title, Enodia was linked to Hekate since at least the 4th century BCE, but not exclusively. Also see the Wandering Goddess, Hekate of Thessaly. Selene. From the 2nd century BCE, the moon goddess Selene became increasingly syncretized with Hekate. In the Greek lyric fragments, we find Artemis is Selene, and this idea continued into a much later PGM. Completing the trio is Hekate. By the 5th century CE, Nonnus was confident enough to write, "O Selene, driver of the silver chariots, if thou art Hekate of many names, if thou art stag hunter Artemis." Hekate is also referred to and equated to Mene, one of the 50 daughters of Selene. Mene was the name of the daughter who presided over the months, which were calculated by the phase of the moon. This group of goddesses were so closely associated with each other that on occasion they were considered entirely interchangeable. Kotansky emphasizes this, writing that, by the time of writing the Greek magical papyri, in fact, Artemis, Hekate, Selene, Mene, Persephone were so intimately intertwined that any differentiation between them as archetypal moon goddesses and earthly netherworld figures was impossible. Isis. In the Metamorphosis, Hekate is mentioned as one of the many names of the Greco-Egyptian mother goddess Isis. The same text ascribes long lists of qualities to Isis, many of which are also attributable to Hekate. "I am she that is the natural mother of all things, mistress and governess of all the elements, the initial progeny of worlds, chief of powers divine, queen of heaven, the principle of the gods celestial, and light of the goddesses. At my will the planets of the air, the wholesome winds of the seas, and the silences of hell be disposed. My name, my divinity, is adored throughout all the world in divers manners, in variable customs and in many names, to others Bellona and Hekate and Rhamnusia." However, the Metamorphoses names many goddesses as being Isis, reflecting a very particular religious perspective, where all the names refer to the same deity, and as such it is not that surprising to find Hekate listed. Furthermore, Isis's cult was a popular one and fused with that of many other Greek and Roman goddesses. However, Hekate and Isis had many points of commonality and became merged into Isis-Hekate. Jackson discusses one example of such an amalgamation in her book Isis. Magic is a major aspect linking Isis to Hekate. There is a bronze statue in Rome that depicts Hekate wearing a lunar crown of Isis, topped by lotus blossoms, and carrying a lighted torch in each hand. The statue is dedicated to Hekate and Serapis from someone who was saved by them from an unnamed danger. Both Isis and Artemis are shown carrying a torch, as is torch-bearing Hekate, who illuminates the secrets of the underworld. This is not an isolated example. Isis Hekate was shown on coins, including lead tesserae from Memphis. Minted during the Roman period, one such example depicts Isis Hekate with 3 faces, crowned with a horned crown, next to the apis bull and another smaller human figure, possibly a daemonis. Isis had acquired the horns during her own conflation with the cow-headed Hathor, and Hekate was often described as being bull or cow-headed. The Uraeus serpent also appears on coins showing Isis Hekate, again highlighting the serpent symbol shared by both goddesses. Isis Hekate similarly appears on intaglios, engraved gemstones, in triple form, holding serpents, swords, and torches, items associated with Hekate. The 2 goddesses are also both depicted as mother goddesses, holding a child. Isis is shown holding her son Horus, or Harpocrates, in both seated and standing positions. Hekate is likewise shown holding a child, likely the baby Dionysos or Sabazius, though it is possible that it might also represent Apollo or Zeus, as there are hints connecting her to the birth of both of these gods, albeit not as their mothers. One extant example of this can be found in the Archaeological Museum Sofia, Bulgaria. The carving of feet onto the steps of the Temple of Hecate in Lagina may have been due to contact with the cult of Isis. The practice of carving plantae pendem as ex votos at temples was specific to initiates of Isis, and subsequently spread around the Roman Empire alongside her cult. Outside the Egypt, Osiris became Serapis, the companion of Isis. Their child Horus became the god Hippocrates, associated with secrets. There is evidence for Serapis's presence at the Temple of Hecate in Lagina, suggesting that a small sanctuary to Serapis stood at the site. This, combined with numerous inscriptions from other sites linking Isis Hecate and Hecate with Serapis, and depictions on crystal talismans showing Hecate with Hippocrates, shows that Hecate and Isis's connection went deeper. The Egyptian collection in the National Archaeological Museum of Athens features a bronze statue of Isis entitled Isis the Magician. This image, which shows Isis with 3 faces, is likely a Hellenic depiction inspired by Isis's conflation with Hecate. As an interesting aside, Jackson notes that Isis became associated with dogs outside of Egypt. Isis's temple in Rome shows an image of Isis on a dog, as well as an image of Isis with a dog beneath her throne. Outside of Egypt, processions honoring Isis were frequently led by a priest of Anubis, wearing a jackal mask. Trio of Fates, Eranes, or the Eranes. In fact, Hecate appealed to the later imagination more as an infernal power than as a Luna. She borrows her whipping cord from the Furies. The Eranes, or Furies, are depicted as 3 unpleasant-looking women, sometimes robed in black. They are not part of the heavenly gods of Olympus. Instead, they dwell with Hades and Persephone, alongside the spirits of the dead. The primary function of the Eranes is to uphold natural balance, protect strangers and firstborn children, and to punish oathbreakers. They are primordial forces of nature. The goddess Hecate in her triple form and the Eranes, in addition to both being shown as 3 women, also share a remarkable number of important symbols. If there is an unknown syncretization between Hecate and the Eranes, this may provide additional clues to Hecate's free-form nature. The Eranes hold torches, swords, whips, and sometimes spears and snakes, all of which are objects the threefold Hecate is also depicted with. The tools wielded by the Eranes represents natural balance and justice. If there is a connection between the implements of the Eranes and those of Hecate, then the same meaning and purpose could be assigned to Hecate's tools, which are, after all, identical. In the Sudas, the Eranes are described as Aipathenos, eternal virgins. This was to ensure that they would be incorruptible and that their powers would not be affected by bribes. Hecate is also described as a virgin goddess and given the titles of both Kore and Parthenos. Both Hecate and the Eranes are described as being crowned with the coils of wild serpents. Von Rudloff highlights this connection, saying that the portrayal is reminiscent of the Eranes, as Aeschylus reputedly first described them. Physis, or Thesis. Physis is a goddess who may have been derived from Hecate, representing a lower aspect of the feminine divine, represented by Hecate in the Chaldean oracles. Boundless Physis is suspended from the back of the goddess Hecate. According to the oracles, Physis represented the moon as well as the functioning of the material world, which the Phrygists sought to rise above. She was associated with earthly daemons who were considered to be deceptive, but she herself was not evil. The oracles advised the Phrygists to avoid Physis. Do not invoke the self-manifesting image of Physis. Do not look at Physis, for her name is like fate. Physis was described by the early 5th century CE Greek bishop Synesius as the mother of daemons. In this, he was drawing on the Chaldean oracles, which stated, Physis persuades us to believe that the daemons are pure and that the products of evil matter are propitious and good. Epithets. There are hundreds of epithets associated with Hekate. Epithets are like surnames, generally added to that of the deity, but in some instances used instead of the primary name the deity is known by. Epithets are frequently employed in hymns and invocations, and provide both scholars and devotees with insights into the nature of the deity. It is useful to consider the different reasons epithets may have been given to Hekate. Syncretization with another deity, where the cult of Hekate merged with that of another deity. Examples include Isis Hekate, Hekate Selene, Artemis Hekate, Diana Hekate. Related to a specific cult role held by the deity. For example, Hekate Korotrophos, where the epithet describes something about the function fulfilled by the deity. Honorific titles, earned by the deity or given to them to emphasize something powerful about them. Hekate Sotera, Savior, was used at locations where Hekate was said to have contributed to safeguarding a city or its people. Epithets can be Epithets can be descriptive, recording something of the appearance of the deity. Hekate Phosphorus, light, describes the goddess manifesting as mysterious luminous light. Epithets may indicate a link to a particular location. Hekate Populaia, by the gate, is a reference to the placement of shrines to the goddess in gateways. Polyonymy, the use of many names for the same thing. A good example of this can be seen in the Metamorphosis, where the names of dozens of goddesses, including Hekate, are said to simply be other names for Isis. Hekate has hundreds of epithets attributed to her at different times and in different places. During her long history of worship, with a thriving international cult today, new attributes and with them new epithets continue to emerge. There are several websites dedicated to gathering together Hecate's historical epithets, together with evidence for their use. In particular, see the websites of Sarah Nahedi Croft, Renee Olsen, and the Covenant of Hekate for examples. The following table provides a short list of just some of the many titles associated with Hekate. Angelos, Messenger, Darphoros, Torchbearer, Enordia, In the Road, Epipergidia, On the Tower, Cthonia, of the Earth/Underworld, Kleidukos, Keybearer/Keykeeper, Kore, Maiden, Korotrophos, Child's Nurse, Kanegitis, Leader of Dogs, Lampadephoros or Lampadios, Bearer of a Lamp, Mastigothophorus, Whip Bearer, Melino, possibly quince coloured, a yellow colour associated with death, or dark-minded. Metaphion, Mother of the Gods, Parthenos, Virgin, Pegasychon, Source of Souls, Persean, Daughter of Perses, Physis, Nature, Phosphorus, Light/Luminous Light, Propolos, Guide/Companion, Propylaia, Before the Gate, Sotera, Savior, Skylacatis or Skylakitis, Protector of Dogs, Toropolos, Bull-Faced, Triformus or Triformos, Free-Formed, Trioditis, Free Roads, and Trivia, Free Ways. And that brings us to the end of Chapter 2, Full Circle for Hekate by Sorita Deste. I hope that you enjoyed this reading and was able to follow along. Feel free to tune in when we do our next live reading event or when the next live reading video goes up. And let me know if you have any suggestions or requests for books that you would like live read as well about Hekate or to learn about Hekate. Feel free to join the Sanctuary of the Crossroads Discord server if you haven't already, and subscribe to this channel if you would like to hear more live readings, also see my tarot reading VODs, or as well as you can tune in to see my recorded readings for those looking for guidance or some comfort as well. I appreciate you spending some time with me in reading this book, and I hope you have a wonderful rest of your day as well.